Hello, fellow Rebel Capitalists. Hope you're well. Wanted to go over some news from Zero Hedge regarding Joe Rogan pointing out the media narrative around Ukraine just doing a complete 180 from where it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I think this is a very important story because it's my view that the media is trying to manipulate you to believe something that may or may not be true, but they've got an objective. They want to uh, they want to stoke emotion. They don't want you to use critical thinking about what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. They just want you to get angry about it. So you want to do something. And I also pointed out or highlighted a quote from a Chinese philosopher that said that pretty much the biggest mistake you can make is underestimating your opponent. And I think that's what the media's objective is. Now, I think it's because the global elite. I'm sure you have your own theory as to why they're doing this. But I've tried to point out the media contradicting themselves over and over and over again, not just with the cerveza sickness, but now with Russia. So it opens people's eyes and they realize that there's something more to this than just good versus evil. And hopefully they'll start to question why the media is so intent on people believing the narrative. Not just believing the narrative, but by getting emotionally attached to the narrative to where that is their worldview. So if anything strays from that worldview, then they feel cognitive dissonance, and this really makes sure that even if the narrative is disproven, that the people still don't attack the people that were wrong about the narrative in the first place. I mean, it's like Stockholm syndrome. It's what we see right now with the cerveza sickness. That whole narrative is crumbling, but the people who bought into that narrative because it was their worldview and they were emotionally engaged, now they don't blame the media. They don't blame the central planners. They don't blame the authoritarians who were wrong and contradicted themselves and lied this whole time. And I think that's part of the game with Russia and Ukraine. They want you to believe this narrative, and if we find out in the future that the narrative was incorrect, then they want to say, "Oh, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. We were just following the science," or something like that. And again, my point or my objective is to try to open up people's eyes to the point where they at least realize that there's something going on behind the scenes here, and that you need to look into it and explore it further. So let's go into this Joe Rogan video, and you'll see what I'm referring to. It was on Zero Hedge, and this is Rogan, I'm assuming in one of his most recent interviews, where he starts talking about how bizarre it is that 3 years ago, Ukraine was public enemy number one with the media. And now all of a sudden they're the heroes. And again, I always have to say this. I'm not trying to justify what Russia is doing. Not at all. I'm totally against Russia invading Ukraine. I'm against any country invading any other country. So this isn't, that I'm trying to make excuses for what Putin and Russia is doing. What I am trying to do is highlight what the media, this 180 degree turn that they've made, so you start to question what their true motives are. Let's get into this video from Rogan.
Screenshot that someone sent me of the way the people on the left were talking about the Ukraine situation before the war. I'm going to send this to you, Jamie. Sorry. But this is one of the things that's so weird, is that they were very disparaging of Ukraine, and they were talking about the massive corruption of Ukraine and how horrible it was over there. And now all of a sudden they're looking at it like they're heroes.
Yeah, I mean that's
the same exact people.
Yeah,
This is what's confusing. This is how the West was covering Ukraine before the war. It's welcome to Ukraine, the most corrupt nation in Europe. That's Fox.
So this is a post that I actually retweeted a couple weeks ago or whatever, and the person just took headlines from all of the mainstream, not all, but a lot of these mainstream media sources from 2 or 3 years ago, talking about how Ukraine was just this horrible place filled with racists and people that were alt-right, and how Zelensky himself was someone that is not a champion of freedom. That Zelensky himself is someone that was an authoritarian, that is an enemy of the West, so to speak. And that's what Rogan's reading from right here.
A new Europe, Ukrainian president rule becomes increasingly corrupt and authoritarian. Ukrainian President Zelensky deepens alliance with the far right. And this is one of the things that, we're hearing from people on both sides, that they have a Nazi problem over there. There's a lot of Nazis involved in Ukraine. And there was something that I saw on Facebook where Facebook allowed, I don't know this is what's so confusing about, what they call the fog of war. It's not necessarily really the fog of war, it's the fog of the distribution of information, is that we're supposed to just completely take a hard right turn or a veer away, a hard angle away from the narrative that was being pushed just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to ignore all this stuff now. And I don't know what's right and what's wrong. Because there was something about Facebook allowing likes. Yeah, Facebook allows war posts urging violence against Russian invaders. Like, what?
Yeah, I know.
What
I
the
saw that.
fuck is that?
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Yeah, so again, guys, my point there is just to really illustrate that, to say the very least, the media is lacking consistency. I mean, just think about it this way. You guys know my opinion of the World Economic Forum and the global elite. Just think if I, after doing all of these videos, all the whiteboard videos, all of the these live streams, just think if 2 or 3 years from now, I came out and said that the global elite and the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab were heroes, that we should all aspire to be exactly like them, and that I didn't even acknowledge that I, had a poor opinion of them in the past. I just said that these people at the World Economic Forum are amazing. They're incredible. They're absolutely fantastic. And we should support anything that Klaus wants to do. Now, you guys that have watched my videos, of the last year and a half, that you watch my videos now, or let's say you were watching my videos in 3 years, what would you think if I came out and said that? Would you trust me more or trust me less? Wouldn't you wonder what my true intentions were? And wouldn't there be a good possibility that my intentions weren't that my intentions were something other than what I led you to believe? Well, this is the exact same thing the media is doing right now. So just like Rogan said, I don't have all the answers. But what I'm trying to encourage you to do is think through this on your own. Use critical thinking. Understand that there's something going on behind the scenes. So don't allow yourself to get emotional about it. Don't allow yourself to get sucked in to believing just whatever the media is telling you, regardless of whether it's about the cerveza sickness or about what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. And a lot of people take that the wrong way. They say, oh, well, George, what are you saying? That Russia isn't invading Ukraine, that this is all just kind of theater, that it's not really happening? No, of course I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is the way the media presents it to you, they're doing it in a way that is meant to lead you to a conclusion. It's meant to influence you. It's meant to manipulate you. And another way that you can see this is the way they're trying to set this whole thing up as though it's just good versus evil. You know where else they do that? They do that in a movie. In all the action movies that you guys watch. You know, whether it's a James Bond movie, Jason Bourne, Mission Impossible, something. It's always the same. They do what they call character development at the beginning of the movie, and they do something. They always do something where they first introduce the bad guy. He's got to be doing something that makes you hate him for the rest of the movie. Because if you didn't hate him, then at the end of the movie, when the bad guy dies or whatever, then you would feel bad for that person. You wouldn't be cheering for the good guy. And that's what they want you to do. And obviously the script writer for the movie does that intentionally. Right? Why are they doing that? Because they want to draw you in emotionally. And they want to lead you to a conclusion. So don't you think it's suspicious that the media is using the exact same tactics? Not just the media, but the politicians. You know, Boris Johnson came out just the other day, and that's exactly how he framed it. He said this is good versus evil. Really? It's that simplistic. This is just, you know, all Russians and Putin, they're just evil. And then all Ukrainians in the West, they're just, quote unquote, good. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. And what's staggering is how many people are buying this nonsense. And they're just allowing themselves to just get so worked up over this to the point where they're threatening Peter Schiff with death just because he criticizes the fact that the president wore a T-shirt in front of Congress. You know, that's how insane people are about this right now. That's how much of this mob mentality has really taken over. And it's just like the Salem witch hunts. But we've got to blame the people, but we also have to blame the media, the global elite. But then we also have to ask ourselves, why? Why are they doing this? And is there an incentive for the global elite, for the politicians, for the central planners, for the authoritarians, for the United States to go to war with Russia? And if so, how do we make sure that we're not supporting that? That's really the bottom line here. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, make sure that you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. We'll see you in the next video.